All right. How's it going? So this is the second or third video in this series, talking about life contingency planning and disaster recovery. In this series, I kind of talk about how we can bring some of the principles of business continuity and disaster recovery into our own lives, just to make everything more resilient for ourselves, our families, and things like that. If you haven't noticed, uh, there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. Um, you know, when Trump became president, starts looking at all the government finances, finds a whole bunch of waste, fraud, and abuse, and uh, you know, clearly, we want to cut some of that out. But unfortunately, um, kind of the way it is, like, people are, going to potentially lose their jobs, or be hurt financially and things like that, and nobody wants that to happen to actually to anybody. So, with that being said, uh, for this video, we can talk about, basically playbook creation. This is kind of, when we talk about playbooks, especially in the IT world or the cybersecurity world, a playbook is kind of when an incident happens, like say if a company gets ransomware or you have a business email compromise. This is like the standard operating procedures or the SOP on how everybody can react, uh, kind of working off the same plan and run as efficiently as possible to identify the threat, analyze it, contain it, eradicate it, and then recover from that incident. So same thing, in our own personal lives. On the last video I talked about identifying some of the risks, and I think one of the ones that I mentioned was job loss. So this video is pretty much dedicated, or will create a playbook for job loss, and in reality, it's kind of just income loss. But we'll kind of focus on the job with that. So the very first step would be, detection and eradication, or detection and analysis. So, job loss, it's pretty apparent. You either have the job or you don't, or if you kind of focus on like just income, you're either having the income come in or you don't. Either one, they're very very similar, but there's some nuances. But if you lost your job, uh, you'll notice it. You don't work anymore. Um, so uh, that's the first step, really easy. Second step, containment. How are we going to stop the bleeding from the loss of income? You're still spending money. If yesterday everything was hunky dory, you have all your Netflix subscriptions, any subscriptions to like entertainment. You might have deliveries come through Amazon or like some of those food deliveries, all that stuff. You actually might be eating pretty well. Maybe you're eating steak or lobster or something like that. But then the next day you lose your job. So was it like we need to stop the bleeding? So the very first thing you should probably have on your list during the containment phase is to cancel any and all subscriptions that you can. Netflix, I don't know if there's free tiers, but there is. You could probably suffer through commercials. Use YouTube as entertainment, but we're trying to stop the bleeding, and one of those little things that kind of add up are all those internet subscriptions. So you might want to cancel those like straight up right off the bat. Next thing is if you do have bills, credit card debt, things like that, call all your creditors, call all your utilities. If you have a house or apartment where you pay for electricity, call all of them, tell them what happened, and they might be a plan to either, like say on a credit card debt, they might be able to just kind of freeze things for a period of time, or they might be able to put you on a like reduce the interest rates. And if you had like $100 minimum payment, maybe they could reduce or eliminate that. There's things that you could do temporarily. Utilities, they might have programs to reduce costs for a period of time. So take advantage of those if they exist. So like the very first day or the first week, you like just you know cut or stop the bleeding. Just try to maintain and keep as much money as possible. Um, so yeah, pretty straightforward. Um, one thread or thing you can identify for this step is emergency funds. Um, Ideally, it's probably a good idea for someone to have 3 to 6 months of uh, living expenses, so it can kind of pad this. If you don't have any living expenses, then you will probably have to take a different. You probably have to take different actions than you would if you have 3 to 6 months of savings. And we can kind of get into this maybe a little bit later in the video. Third step, technically eradication and recovery. We're not eradicating viruses or anything like that, but some of the key points of this is how you're going to recover from a job loss. Get another job. Pretty straightforward. Um, are you? But one thing to consider when you are looking for jobs, are you just going to put yourself right in the same situation again? Um, you know, kind of using the government as an example. If there's a lot of uncertainty and doubt because of one political spectrum or the other policies on things. Maybe a government job or jumping right back into a government job may or may not be the best thing. If you are at, I don't know, if there's such thing as a 20-year retirement in like the federal government, if you're at 15 years, it might be worth doing another 5 years and then retiring. But are you putting yourself right back in that same situation? I know AI is a potential threat to a lot of jobs, so maybe like consider that when looking for a new job. And then so just make sure like your recovery plan will put yourself in a more resilient position in the future. And then kind of the last step is the after action. So after you got laid off, after you cut or stop the bleeding, called creditors and stuff like that, and you recovered. Maybe you just did it by the skin of your teeth. Maybe you had 3 months of emergency funds, but it took you that fourth month to get a job. So, like one of the things to consider on that after action is, hey, we need more emergency funds. So instead of just trying to build back up to that 3 month emergency fund, maybe try to build up to a 4 or a 6 month emergency fund. You can get as creative as you want, but the whole point is to recover, get that income flowing back in, or get that job, to put yourself back in operating status, so you can kind of go back to business as usual. But ideally, you go back to business as usual in a stronger position. So that was relatively quick. We'll go back to the recovery or the eradication and recovery phase, because there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up specific to job loss. If you have zero emergency funds and you lose your job, we'll just pretend you lost your job February 1st. You put all these actions in place. You're either living in an apartment or most people don't own their home, so you have a home payment or house payment. You have to make some really big decisions pretty quickly. And what I'm calling is basically levels of survival. In a perfect world, everybody has a house, paid off or whatever. They're living, everything's good. Next step would be like kind of an apartment or downgrade to a smaller home, like a cottage, a condo, maybe a tiny home, something like that. Where you get into more unusual situations, there's people living in RVs, vans, cars, things like that. that might be an appropriate action. Whether you want to consider yourself homeless or not, it's kind of a philosophical question, but there's levels to survival. After that, then there's probably living day to day in was it like Airbnb type situations, and eventually you are homeless. Um, but there's a spectrum, just kind of like everything. So uh, think about that, analyze it. It doesn't really matter if you can live with it or not. Like if you lose your apartment and they evict you, you lose your apartment. That just is what it is. So if say life was great, you had a good job paying a lot of money, and you had an RV or like a trailer, kind of something like that. Uh, that's a very viable option, especially if that trailer is paid off. You could, depending on where you live, you could live on BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. That's virtually free. You could, what they call it, mooch camping, where you pull up the RV, or if you live from your car, you can pull up and a friend or a neighbor, family, things like that. There's actually like programs for like full-time RVers where they pay X amount of dollars, but they're able to stay in certain places for pretty cheap. Um, so those are all actually pretty good options, and a lot of people voluntarily do this. When they get either want to downsize and their house is too big and stuff like that. So that is an option. Consider it. Um, living in a small car or van, there's a YouTube channel. I think it's called Cheap RV Living or somewhere along those lines. You probably just type it into Google or not type it into YouTube, and you'll see tons of videos of people in that same situation. As far as homelessness is concerned, uh, unfortunately, it happens to some people, and from what I kind of understand, and just watching some of these videos, um, a lot more people are in a temporary homeless status than chronically homeless. Um, and I think the people that are like have mental illness issues for whatever the reason, and like maybe drug addiction, alcoholism, stuff like that, those might be more in a position to be chronically homeless. Maybe veterans, PTSD, stuff like that. But sometimes, like, just shit happens, and you lose your job. You weren't prepared. You weren't ready for it, and maybe you're technically, quote unquote, technically homeless, living in your car for a month before you found that job. Um, and like, there's really no shame of it. Like, you don't even have to be homeless. Maybe you have friends and family, and you got laid off, you got fired, or whatever the circumstances, and you went and lived with them. Technically, I mean, you're living in a house, but it's not yours. Um, Whether you want to call that homeless or not, again, kind of philosophical question. But stuff happens, and like you just have to kind of grin and bear it and kind of work through the situation. Um, for like looking for that next job, um, especially like on the timeline. Say you do have 4 to 6 months. That first month, while you're stopping the bleeding, you're cutting all your expenses, stuff like that, and kind of going bare minimum in your job hunting. Maybe that first month you're looking for that really really good job. If you're a cybersecurity analyst, you're looking for that cybersecurity analyst job. Um, Maybe in the second month you kind of look a little bit wider instead of like focusing just on cybersecurity. Um, you're looking for IT in general. Um, Maybe that third month or that fourth month, now you're looking for help desk. And you're not even just necessarily, if you're in Texas, say, Houston, maybe you're not even looking in Houston anymore. Maybe you're looking in Austin or some of these other places that have lots of job opportunities like that. But at some point, when push comes to shove, like if I worked IT or on computers my whole life, there might be there probably should be a level that if you're at that fourth month or fifth month out of your emergency funds, you might, depending on your age, want to start looking at construction or like the trades, um, or maybe like work at Starbucks, maybe work at a coffee shop, work retail, food. I don't. There probably are. Like I've worked food service a few times, and I I didn't like it. Not because the working conditions were hard or anything. I just didn't really like it. I've worked retail, like clothes and stuff like that. Some people love like that job. Like it just wasn't for me, and it was mostly kind of working with customers. Um, Almost actually on both ends. The thing I didn't like on food service is the amount of time and hours I had to spend cleaning after we closed. I did not like that. But that's just me. Everybody's different. There's probably stuff in IT or cybersecurity that people just can't stomach. But I like it. So, uh, yeah. So that's kind of some thoughts for how to build a playbook. And when you're building this and you're thinking through the scenario, write it all down. On a notebook. Uh, kind of study it and uh, maybe once a year or whenever you have big life changes, look at it, review it, and update it if you need to. So if when you originally kind of created your and thought through your plan, if you're single but now you're married, completely different situation. Maybe your wife has a job and you can kind of rely on her income for a period of time to before you get your job, and it might change like everything. You might not be able to need to go to work immediately, or you might be able to kind of turn that 3 to 6 months of emergency fund into 6 months to 12 months. All sorts of different things. Um, if you recently got divorced, that's a whole other thing to think through. If when you made the playbook, if you're married and now you have kids, again, whole another like scenario. So probably an annual or yearly review, or kind of just like anything, whenever you have big life changes or like milestones, probably a good idea shortly after that to review the plan. So, uh, yeah, that's it. If y'all have any questions, comments, just leave them below. If you like the video, like it, subscribe. I'll probably continue doing some of these scenarios, just thought experiments, because I'm kind of weird. I like doing that, and I will be working on actually creating a template, uh, and then I'll eventually attach it to some of these videos. So all the little considerations that you need to think about, I'll just have like on this video, I'll attach job loss, income loss playbook. Um, I think next week we could probably talk about maybe an injury, or something like that. Or actually, better off, we'll talk about severe and inclement weather. So I'll have a severe slash inclement weather playbook, and just as I think of other scenarios, like common scenarios, we can create playbooks for that. Attach it at the bottom of the video in the description, and just kind of go from there. So hope you like the video. Thanks for coming or stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.